Welcome to our first video in the Comenius Learning Series set of videos that will be posted and out for our Zoom discussion groups that will take place for the 2020 Comenius Learning Series. My name is Chaz Snyder, and I'm really excited to be a part of the Comenius Learning Series this year from the Border Cooperative Ministries. Just really looking forward to getting into some of this material. I think it's really can be really useful for us today in thinking through the church and thinking through specifically our Moravian identity and our Moravian theology. So the title of the Comenius Learning Series this year is A Wounded Faith, Zinzendorf's Theology in the 21st Century. And in this video, I want to talk a little bit about what that state of theology is in the 21st century. So the title of today's video is What in the World is Going On Today? What is the current state of faith and theology? And the reason I chose to say faith and theology is I don't want to just talk about the theoretical or the theological ideas. I really want us to think through what is the state of the lived faith, of the Christian faith. And I also chose to use faith as opposed to church as well, because I don't want us to think about the church as an institution, or maybe even really the church as even in the communal sense. I really want us to look at what is it about about faith, about the individual choice, the individual response to what to the call of Christ, and what does that look like in the 21st century, and how do we understand the current state of theology? So that's going to be what we're going to talk about here today. And like I mentioned before, this is going to be one of 6 videos. We're going to have 3 that'll come out before our first discussion, and then 3 that'll come out before our second discussion. And really looking forward to those. And so I hope these will be helpful to you all. And so first, let's just look at the current state of faith and church and theology. And it's hard there's a lot of ways you can look at this. There's a lot of different metrics one can take to sort of analyze where the church is at. And so I've chosen to just pull a few statistics to sort of get this to get these ideas rolling. So church membership is down to 50% in the U.S. This is down from 70% in 1999. So a pretty drastic drop off. Membership has fallen 9% with those who consider themselves religious in this same time period. And the reason I pulled that statistic is I find that very interesting, because people who identified themselves as religious are choosing not to be a part of membership in a church. And what you also find is that those who do claim Christianity as their faith, you will find that they have moved multiple denominations. The average person has moved multiple denominations throughout their life. And so what we're finding is that people are not static in their experience of faith. That there is a journey or some sort of longing, or there's some things not connecting that is driving people to continue to look. And we see this also in the fact that today about 37% of Americans attend a weekly service, which was down from 30 years ago when it was 67%. Now, what is interesting is none of these statistics take into account what we're experiencing in the midst of the coronavirus pandemic and how that's affected sort of church and attendance. And we won't know those ramifications, I think, for many years. But I think it's also pointing to the fact that people are choosing a sense of being able to choose their faith, to explore, to go on a journey. They're not finding one place where they settle down and stay in, and this seems to be a common trend today. And many of these statistics, I think, are commonplace at this point. These have been things that we've been talking about in the church for almost 10 years now, sort of harping on this decline and talking about millennials, and even millennials are moving into another generation, and there's Generation Z, and how do we? And so we've spent a lot of time talking about how do we reach out, how do we recapture, how do we get sustainability. And what I want to look at is not so much in this series of talks is not so much what about the institution or what about its relevancy can we look at, because one of the things that we found in recent statistics is that these declines are happening across denominations. They're happening across the theological spectrum, from both conservative to progressive churches. Both are in decline. We're finding it across worship styles, regardless of whether that's contemporary or traditional or something in between. What we're finding is that all of them seem to be in some form of decline. And instead of getting into discussions about worship styles or church practices, what I want to look at through this series of talks is what is this telling us? What is this telling us about what's going on with the state of theology and faith today? Because something isn't connecting at a theological level, and that would be my argument, that there is something that is not connecting. There's a misfire between the way that we're proclaiming the Christian message and the way people are hearing it and receiving it in the 21st century. Is it and I want to explore Zinzendorf's wounds theology in particular as a way to help us re-articulate what faith means, how to live faith, what faith, why faith is an important thing, why is it beneficial to the human experience. And I think Zinzendorf can help us with this. Obviously, there's a lot of things to be taken in. You got to look at in context when it comes to Zinzendorf and theology. But the way we're going to sort of look at this series of 6 videos is over the next 2 videos, we'll be really digging into Zinzendorf's wounds theology. We'll be digging into what made Zinzendorf so radical in his time. And we'll be looking at was the theology of the wounds important? Was it an important thing? Was it an important thing for Zinzendorf? How was it important? And then over the next videos, we'll be exploring then how do we take these ideas and why might they connect up with sort of what we're some of the theological trends or the theological crises that we're experiencing in today's world. Why do people not seem to be connecting to this message? Where is that misfire? Because I think there is something that is deeply powerful about that message and transformative, and part of what we want to do here is just sort of to explore that. And I think we see that trend of theology, of churches being in decline, of people sort of moving away from faith, also sort of translating into the discipline of theology in general. It's not a discipline that is that's sort of seen in the academic world in the same way as it used to be. And how does theology relate to the rest of the ways to look at the world? And how can a theological perspective help us to help us not just to see our faith, but to see the rest of the world and how we understand and interpret the world? So that's a little bit of an overview of what we're going to be looking at over the course of this Comenius Learning Series, and why really the takeaway I want you to leave with this video is that there is a lack of resonance. There is a lack of connection between the Christian message of Christ crucified and the status of where we are as humans in the 21st century. And I hope to explore how Zinzendorf and his theology and the theology of the Moravians of that time can help us rediscover what it means to say Christ and Him crucified remains our confession of faith. How is that not just impactful to us as Moravians here and now, that are all of us joining together, but how does that message have a universality to it? One that connects and resonates whether you grew up Moravian or you didn't. Because that's something I think we believe to be true about the Christian faith, is that it's not something that that is confined, that it has a declaring property to it, that it must be. And I want to sort of explore how Zinzendorf understood faith, how he understood Christ and Christ's wounds, and how that can help us, perhaps help us to maybe look at a radical version of Christianity today that may have some really powerful implications in our world today. So thank you for joining us for video number 1 of these 6 videos. So I hope you will join us on our Zoom discussion coming up soon, and I hope you'll tune into the rest of this series of videos. And thanks for joining. Grace and peace, everybody.